Gridley, California. A very important town in the history of both the Heitman and the Peterson family. Hello and welcome to my first documentary film. The only one left in the Gridley, California is Uncle Louie Rago. That's the man we're going to talk to today. We're going to interview him, we're going to find out a little bit about what his life has been like. This is not meant to be a complete documentary or a complimentary documentary. It's meant to be a bit of some taped history so that future generations will know a little bit more about our past. Because people like Uncle Louie, they are our past. They are our history. And towns like Gridley, that's where our roots were. So, with that in mind, here we go. You come north on Route 99. Come across Magnolia Street in Gridley. And that's where you turn left to get to Uncle Louie's house. This is the town of Gridley. Let's give you a good sweeping here of the main drag here, right by Magnolia Street. The town of Gridley isn't what you call a rip-snorting town. Farming community. You can tell this time of year it's the prune festival because you can smell them as you're coming into town. I saw lots and lots of trucks with tomatoes piled high and some melons that were freshly picked. This is the breadbasket of America. Right there is the Casa Lupe. That's the restaurant that if you come to visit Uncle Louie, he is going to take you here. That's all there is to it. You must come to the place quite often. Because every time you come into town, this is where he brings you. And that's Gridley. Here we are in Uncle Louie's side yard. This is the famous croquet center of the world. As you recall, the croquet that was played on this lawn. Dealing with the loss of his wife, 42 years of marriage. Maybe as I get to know him a little bit again, it's been a long time since he's known me, maybe after a while he'll decide that perhaps he'd like to preserve some of his history for posterity. I don't think he has a real complete understanding of the importance of heritage for future generations. But who can blame him? After all, he's been through a tremendous loss. And it's still pretty fresh in his heart and his mind. So I could forgive him. So I still sat and talked with him. We had a wonderful conversation. I tell you, the things he told me were golden. The man is still very coherent. Oh, he has some of the idiosyncrasies of the aged, but that's nothing that is to be expected. I really did enjoy talking to him. things he told me about my grandfather, special. Of course, he sees them in a very special eye. He sees them in the eye of looking back. Plus, he's a minister, so he wants to make everything not sugar-coated, but perhaps in a better light than is actually true. Perhaps I'll have better luck in paradise. That's the next segment's going to be all about. Show you why in a bit. Here is your typical sleepy little intersection in suburban paradise. I think God invented trees here, and only after he had covered every square possible inch he could did he decide to let the rest of the world in on the invention. Not only are there beautiful homes, but there's beautiful views. Everything about this area is beautiful. And this is where our next set of people to whom we are going to document live. Aunt Erma and Aunt Luella. Aunt Erma's house. The walkway down from the steps. In front of the house, and there's a chimney. And Aunt Erma. Garage. There's where she stands to greet you when you come and visit her. And there's Aunt Erma's house, and if you just go right next door, you find Aunt Luella's place. Beautiful little pink house. Big bushes and shrubs in front. And that's the front door of Aunt Luella's home. Camera won't focus. There we go.
Wait a minute. It's right behind him here. That's it. Is that what you're talking about?
That's it.
That's it.
That's what I want to do tonight. I'll go to the other.
Do you want us to sit here in front of this picture?
Mm-hmm.
I said he should take you by the piano instead of me on the demo.
Okay, we can do that.
We'll get it. That's fine. We'll get everybody.
I have to go over these songs a little bit because some of them are in my head.
see the little
It's
red
really
thing on it.
red.
Yes, it's on.
See, but it's on.
So first of all, I just want you to state your full name, Erma Leola Gibbs,
Yeah,
and where you live.
I live in Paradise.
Yes. And what's your street address?
California.
And what's your street address?
Oh, 1738 Dean Road.
Dean Road. And you live right next door, right, Aunt Luella?
I live just next door to her, and my name is Luella A. Wagner. I never tell my middle name because I'm not very proud of it. And if you want to guess it, it could be Argentina or Australia or anything
You
like
can
that.
just guess on forever
guess
as to
on.
what it is.
And my street is 6915 Farber Lane.
Farber Lane.
Mhm.
And when did you move here?
In 1971. I came in June, and Irma came, when did you come here?
I came in January 1971.
And I came following
In
June.
June. Now, did you move right into this house, or did you
No.
live with her?
I lived with her for 6 months until my house
Until
was
the house
being
was
built.
being built,
When
sure.
my house was being built.
Mhm.
Then we're here.
Yeah, well, what's your father's name? Full name?
Theodore William Heitman
Do you know where he was born?
in Iowa. What was the name of the place in Iowa?
Do you know?
Burlington, Iowa?
Something like that.
In Iowa. Okay, and your mother's full name?
Matilda. I don't think she had a middle name.
It's
I've never
Matilda
heard it.
Kruger.
It's Matilda Kruger.
And do you know where she was born? The city? We don't know exactly.
She was born in, it was Russia and also Poland. Sometimes the land belonged to Poland and sometimes it belonged to Russia. And so it was Russian and also Poland.
Right, depending on who happened to have the land at the time.
That's right.
Okay. Now, you grew up in South Dakota. Born in which city? Was it
Irma was born in Madison, South Dakota.
Madison?
And I was born near Gregory, South Dakota, in a sod house.
In the sod house.
You don't see many of them anymore, but they're very good. They're warm in the winter because they're at least 18 inches thick, the walls. And they are very cool in the summertime then too, because you see the hot air can't get into the house that way.
Sure. Aunt Irma, what's your earliest recollection? Your earliest memory you can remember as a little girl? What's the first
When
thing
they
you
carried me out of the wagon into a sod house 4 miles north of Gregory, the only building that was on Daddy's 160-acre farm was a sod house. And no barn, no chicken house. And the horses and cows were so afraid they stayed right around the sod house.
Because they'd never been there.
With gorgeous grass. Oh, they just really ate the grass all around the sod house. Then Daddy did not farm that summer because it was in the spring of the year that they moved from Madison 200 miles to the open land where they had removed all the Indians and moved them all into Millette County and opened that land for white people, working people. They wanted that ground to be worked so the government could get taxes, see? They charged them taxes.
Tripp County.
And then this is Gregory and Tripp County both. They were both the same. And Tripp County opened up later after Gregory County opened up. But Mom and Daddy lived 2 years in Gregory County, and then they moved to Tripp County. And that's when I said, I remember that now too. It was just a barn, and the horses were in 2 stalls, and we lived in the front stall where the door was in. And Mama did her cooking and washing and kept us, and we all slept in the same little room.
What was the name of the horses again?
Charlie and May.
Charlie Horse and May.
And we had 2 others.
Do you remember those horses on the line?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he had 2 more. Always had 4. Topsy was one.
Topsy.
And then the other one, what was?
Well, we had a Roxy, but I don't think we had Pinneck in Tripp
No,
County.
he
Roxy
came
was
later
the-
on.
The workhorses.
We had Fly, another name of a horse.
But to think what the folks went through first in Gregory County on the homestead. Then they moved away, putting all the possessions on a hay rack. I remember that. I can remember riding in a hay rack.
That was 40 miles too away, so
Yeah.
it wasn't just over the hill, it was 40 miles. And you
They
can't go.
drove the cattle ahead of us, and there was a horseback. It must have been a neighbor that was on horseback that did the did the driving, but Daddy was on the big hay rack with a wagon hitched in the back with the hogs in it.
The hogs were
I
in the
can
back.
see the hogs that was in it.
Sure.
But the crate of chickens was in the hay rack.
Did you ever name the hogs or the cows? Just the
No.
horses?
We did cows.
You did name the cows.
Yeah, even one of them was named Pete, I remember.
Pete was the cow. Now, who got to name the cows? Did your parents let you?
No, yeah, the kids did.
The parents let you guys name the kids? Who named Charlie Horse? Or was that before?
I think that probably was named.
That was
I think
before.
he was one when Daddy bought him.
We all had nicknames except me,
Oh yeah?
but it seemed like the children gave them their own nicknames.
Uh-huh.
Luella was Poodles.
They called you Poodles?
Yeah.
Why is that?
I don't
Do you know why? You don't know why? See, no, we have nicknames in our family.
Because she was fat. Fat.
Yeah.
And Hilmer was Bicky, and Orville is the one that looked out the window and said, Bicky-loo, Bicky-loo, Bicky-loo. We could see the school in Gregory. And he's-
Hilmer School. See, that
Oh.
he said
He saw him go to school.
He was brother. See?
Oh, brother. He tried to say brother. It came out
That's
Vicky.
Hilmer. Hilmer's name was Bicky.
And Lou was school, so that's what he would say.
And Orville's name was Audie Boy.
Audie boy.
And Laverne's was Puzzy.
Fuzzy.
It was the puzzle she always went after, and we called her
Yeah.
Puzzy or something like
You
that.
know, Mama Puzzy, Puzzy. And Mama put it way on the cupboard so we
Oh,
kids wouldn't get
she's
a
trying to
hold
reach
of
the
it.
puzzle, and she would say
Yeah,
Puzzy.
Yeah, and
And so-
she always wanted the Puzzy box. We didn't have much
When you see
toys.
the puzzles fit in like this,
Mhm.
and she would push and break them off,
Oh,
and that was
no.
Orville Hilmer's gift, and
Yeah,
Hilmer didn't
yeah,
want
yeah.
her to be playing with it, but she wanted those puzzles. Yeah.
So the kids were the ones who named the animals. That's pretty cute. Mom and Dad were like that. What was Mom like? What was your mom like?
Very more passive and that way than, but if she got mad, she really got mad bad, real bad. And Dad was very much like it, but his passive was long between like Mama. Mama would get mad easy.
Mm-hmm.
Dad, it took quite a while, but when he got mad, he got terribly mad. He had that German boy, and he really got mad. But Mother
Real
was-
hot-tempered.
Yeah, very hot-tempered, but very seldom.
After he got the baptism of the Holy Ghost, Daddy was a whole lot different.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't near so strict or firm like when he was without the baptism.
Our family was a very good, warm family and so forth, but we lacked. We knew we lacked because they tried to raise us very strict, but we always wanted to break through, you know.
Sure, every kid has to rebel. Sure.
And so when we got to be teenagers and a little older, then we got the baptism of the Holy Ghost, and that made a lot of difference to us.
Now, who was the first one to get married?
Ethel.
Ethel was the first. Now, what kind of impact did that have on Mom and Dad?
That wasn't so bad because Ethel had a hard time in the family. She broke the fence all the time. She was breaking out all the time. She went to dances and she did things that Mom and Daddy didn't like for her to do. And so she had a hard time with Mom and Daddy.
Mhm.
You know, they both were against her. And at one time she said, I think I'm going to die. I'm going to die. And Mama said, ask the Lord to forgive you because she said, the way you are, you'll not go to heaven. Ethel just told me that. She said, she said, you'll go to hell because you just have been so disobedient.
Hmm.
But we had a very strong family. It was like yours, you know. It was real. You know. Now, we might fight at home, but I remember when Hilmer got into a fight at school, and the boys were sitting on top of him. I grabbed the kid that's on top of him and tried to pull him off like that because I stuck up for my brother.
Sure, absolutely.
But we fought at home.
But at home, it was cats and dogs.
That's right.
Sure, absolutely, yeah.
But that was fun though, you know.
Are you recording?
I sure am, yeah.
Oh, goodness.
Now, what was your first job, Aunt Irma? Your very first job, once you got a paying job?
A paying job, when I graduated from high school, I taught school.
Straight from high school, you were
Country
teaching?
school. The first country school I had 18 pupils, and no, 28 pupils, and the second one I had 18.
Mhm.
And then I went to Bible college in Minneapolis.
That was after that first job, huh?
And then she got sick there and came home, and that's how we got into Pentecost because she was healed. There was some Pentecostal people came to the store where she was working, and she was telling them that she wasn't very well, and they said, we'll pray for you. And she got healed completely that morning, and I got the baptism of the Holy Ghost. And that was June the 18th, 1929.
1929.
I got the baptism, and I was the first one to get the baptism.
And then Daddy said, my, oh my, how wonderful. We've got sick people in our Baptist church. You come and hold services on nights when they don't have Baptist services. And that is when more and more and more got turned into Pentecost. Then finally, my brother Orville and Daddy took the Titan tractor and pulled in a building from the country, put it on a foundation.
From Dallas, South Dakota.
And we had a Pentecostal church then.
Great. Do you have any recollections of high school? Did you have some favorite chums, Aunt Luella?
Yes, I had Josephine Wood. And the funny part of it was, she said, I'm going to have a birthday pretty soon. I said, I am too. She said, I said, when is yours? She said, it's in February. And I said, mine's in February too. I said, what day? And she said, the 2nd. I said, mine is too. She was just 1 year younger. And we had chummed around a long, long time. We didn't know that.
You didn't know that your birthdays coincided.
Yes, sir. And we were staying with her relatives. We were born a room there. And when they found out that we had a birthday the same, we found out there was another one that had a birthday on the same day. So they had a surprise party. They locked us into a bedroom, and then all of our friends came in the front room, and then they let us out. And of course, we knew there was something going on, you know. But then everybody yelled, happy birthday. All 3 of us had birthdays the same time. But both of those girls are dead.
Oh, yeah.
One died of cancer, and the other one in a car accident.
Yeah. These were high school chums.
High school kids.
Sure.
Wonderful high school people.
Now, you said you went to Bible school.
North Central Bible College in Minneapolis. Baptist Bible College.
Were you a serious student, or did you do pranks, or was...
No, there was over 300 students. That wasn't so many, but we had a wonderful time. We all ate in the cafeteria, you know, and we always had our prayer meetings and Bible studies, and then we had the ministers and teachers to teach us the different subjects of the Bible.
Did you get good marks in school?
Yes, I got pretty good marks.
Now, which college did you go to? Where did you?
I went to Black Hills Teachers College.
Oh, that's right.
Laverne and I went there. She just got out of high school, and I had taught 2 years ago, then 2 years. And then she borrowed her money from Erma and Ethel and in the family, and I had the money. I had my own because I had taught 2 years already, and we went then a whole year. So then we had a first grade certificate because I taught 2 years with a second grade certificate. Then we went, and she taught on the hill, and I taught down in the valley, and there was a river running down through between us. And so if I made my flag half-mast, she said they're all wanting to eat down at the river, the kids. So they came down and we came down, and so then we'd eat our lunch.
Now you had a signal that way.
That's
sure,
right.
You right there.
We worked with a flag. Whatever happened over there, we'd make it out. If your kids want to do so and so, make your flag half-mast.
Okay, how about books? Are there any books that you've ever read that were just really important to you? Books that were impact books. Not beside the Bible. Of course the Bible, I know, is going to be the most important.
Well,
but did you ever read a novel in school or something that just really...
In school, we had to read all of these Miles Standish and, what are some of those characters, older writers. And then when I dated Ward and Jared, they always gave those as movies. And Mom and Daddy wouldn't leave us go, you know, to see them. I said, well, I read the book, why can't I see the movie?
The Shepherd of the Hills?
Yeah, The Shepherd of the Hills.
We went to see it. It was live. Acting.
Oh,
it was good. Yeah, it was really good.
I haven't thought about it for so long, I can't even think of all the books we had to read. But we had to read library books. They demanded that in high school, that we read library books. And they were very good. They weren't books like you read today, that's scandal or robbery and all that kind of business.
We had to make book reports too on it, and you know, so the teacher knew that we read it.
Right.
Mine was The Jumping Off Place, and I read it so many times in the school because it took place exactly where we lived in Tripp County, and named Dallas and Gregory and Colomb and the Dog-Ear Buttes and all that. And this lady that wrote it lived there, and of course with a little imagination and you know, a little bit of fiction to it. She wrote a most wonderful, wonderful, so very, very interesting. The Life of a Homesteader, but the name of it was The Jumping Off Place.
What was the author?
But I know it's the same one that was your principal, oh no, the teachers of the Maule, M-A-U-L-E. Your girls had a teacher by the same name as that lady that wrote that book. M.A.U. Maule, I think his name was. I think that's what hers was too, who wrote the book.
So that was a really important book to you.
Oh man, I read it every time to those kids when I was in, you know, there. And then even when I got to the Christian school over here in Maywood, I even read it there because they wanted to know what homesteading living was like, you know. Man, were there rattlesnakes, you know, and it was really very good. 4 kids came out because their uncle came out, but he died. They didn't have a father and mother. They both had died of plagues and things that were, you know, so prevalent in those early days. So the uncle raised him, and he came from the army, and he regimented them on. But he didn't live very long, and then he told the children they better move back again where they came from, and that was back in Iowa. And the kids, the 4 kids, decided they were going to stay, and so they did. And it sure was an interesting book because see, it was children, and children love to read about children.
Of course, about it, especially when it's about their own home area. Sure. What's your favorite hymn, Aunt Erma?
Favorite hymn?
Or favorite hymns? Do you have a bunch of favorites, or do you have a favorite hymn?
I just have one that I have written for my obituary when I die.
Oh, yeah?
And I think it is Safe in the Arms of Jesus. Safe on his gentle breast. It's a beautiful song.
Mine is When the Roll is Called Up Yonder, I'll Be There.
Yeah?
And you know the reason why is because when I was teaching school, and I taught 39 years, you take roll all the time, you know, and you'll call names. And you'll say Jim, and he says here. And you'll say Mary, and she's here. And you call, Peter, and he doesn't answer. And I said, you know, it's going to be like that in heaven. And they're going to be there, and when they call a name, they didn't make it. And I said, that's exactly, but that's one of the ones they're going to sing at my funeral. When the roll is called up yonder, I'm going to say, here!
Speak out loud and clear. Do you remember Mom and Dad getting married? My mother and father.
Yeah.
Orville and Joyce?
Oh, yeah.
Let's see, they were married in Anaheim.
In Anaheim?
Yeah.
Were you at the wedding?
I can't remember.
You can't remember.
I can't remember.
It's not that clear. Of course, you probably had a lot of things going on at the time.
I remember Laverne and Louis getting married.
Oh, yeah?
But I don't remember.
We all were together. The whole family reunion of Louis and Laverne.
Yeah, but
where were they?
We have a family picture.
They were married in Maywood.
Oh, in Maywood.
They wanted to be married in Maywood. And then they stayed the first night at my house. And then I went, I guess, probably to the folks' house. I don't know, just, but that was what that was their honeymoon suite.
Honeymoon suite. Was that Luella's house?
And it only had a kitchen in the front room.
What was your first impressions of Louis?
Well, I'll tell you,
Did you get to know him while they were dating?
Oh, I knew him before he was saved.
Oh,
and he
yeah.
cocked his hat on the side of his head, you know, on my head. And he was
a real dandy.
He was, what do you call him, a dandy? He was really an, oh, yeah. And he made more fun. If you return to the Pentecostal churches, in German, the word is Spott, and made so much fun, and he still uses the word. See, he's German, too. He's Jew-German, Jewish German. And he'd always say, I did so much what we call Spott in German. He even preaches it when he gets up there. He did. He made so much fun. He said, you know, they're all lies when they got up and testified. They're all lies. They just, see, you can tell the biggest lie. That's what he said. So they went together 17 years.
Wow, 17 years before they were married?
Of course, he was out there, and east and she was over here, you know,
Oh,
in
so it was a
California.
long-distance
So
relationship.
they wrote together, but once in a great while.
I knew your mother for 2 years in Watertown, South Dakota, before your dad ever met her.
In Watertown?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Now how did you get to know her?
And I was in Carthage, and when Laverne came from Texas Bible College, she stayed with me for 2 hours. Years, I mean, not hours, but 2 years, because she taught school there too. Then Orville came the last summer and was with us. And there's one of the girls in our Assembly God church. Oh, she said, Irma, help me. I just want Orville for a friend. I want to have a date with him. I want him so bad. Can you tell him? So I did. I broke the news to him. And he had a couple dates with her, but nothing doing. He waited until he got back to California when Joyce Peterson and her family all moved to California. And there he met her, and that was it. That was it when he saw Joyce. But this other girl,
Now,
like,
how did you get to know Joyce from Watertown?
that I don't know.
Well, she came to
Oh, no,
church.
I did.
Yeah.
I was one of the pastors, the Bible teacher in Watertown.
Mm-hmm.
And they came there to church every Sunday, every
She got
Sunday.
saved.
Joyce and her brothers and sisters, Cecil, you know, Peterson, and the mother and the father, they all were there. And Joyce was just a young lady, you know, just, I don't know, about 13.
Do you remember when Harry and Lillian got divorced?
Who's Harry?
That's my grandma and grandpa. You said that you knew that the mother and father came to church and all that. Mother and father of Joyce, they came to church as a family?
No.
I was wondering if that divorce was a scandal.
No, she didn't. Irma didn't remember Joyce's mother.
And father.
Yeah, the mother came there
But
to
the father too?
Watertown.
How about father? Did
The
you know
father
that?
too, he always came.
Oh, he did?
Yes,
Didn't
he
she?
did. We knew nothing at all about anything,
Mm.
anything different. They were always together. The father would miss sometimes, but the mother with all the children always was there in Watertown Church.
See, she was just a little girl then. Your mom.
My mom, yeah.
The first time I saw your mama, I could see she was in Anaheim. She had the cutest hat. It sat just barely on her head, and it looked just almost like a cake. But it was so cute, and she had it on the side of her head, and I thought, man, that girl, she had real high heels.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I could just see her, and she was so little, you know, with her little dress and everything, she was so tiny around her belt. She was the cutest little gal you ever did see, and when Arnold saw her, I know he just fell in love with her right away because she was so cute.
Mm-hmm.
I can still see that hat on her.
Well, this has been really nice.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much.
No,
The date and the time, very good. Oh, yeah. And smile, Aunt Irma.
Smile, Irma.
There we are.
yes, I am.
That's right. And we'll fade back out again.
You know that little speech that Irma gave? She's one of the things that she said was not true. Maybe I told you. 'Cause I think.
You mean
Yeah, I told you.
tape, yeah?
That's right, I told her. And she says my dad was. I'm sure she never was.
Yeah.
My mother and dad were divorced before she ever came to Watertown.
So she never actually met your father?
Never. I don't know, sometimes she gets things a little, which is normal, I guess, when you get that old. She's pretty good about most things, but once in a while she gets a little.
How old were you when your father left?
Hmm?
How old were you when your father left?
I was between 7 and 8 years old.
And
Around
how much?
8. I
Yeah.
always say I'm
And he was like across town, or where did he move to?
Huh?
Did he move like across town, or did he move to a different state?
No, he was in town.
So you got to see him still?
Oh, yeah.
So
In
he wasn't
fact,
a total stranger?
See, no, but he he couldn't give alimony, I guess. 9
Oh.
kids and you can't support him. He always supported us when he was home, so. So somehow the court said, well, okay, you feed him then. He could feed him, because this was after his, he married again, and his wife had some money, I guess, and so they bought a little mom and pop store. And then they lived in the back of it. That's the way my grandpa and grandma were too. My mother's dad and mother, they had a store and lived in the back of it. So that's the way my dad did. And so while he was there, then we were supposed to, Dawn and I, were supposed to go over there and eat once a day, I guess it was.
Just the two of you?
Well, it was just the two of us for a while. I suppose it was in the winter when my brothers were home. I remember when Harris went with us. I know, and see, his wife had 3 boys, so she sort of would have liked to have had Dawn and I stay with them.
Mm-hmm.
And so I can remember him taking me to Lake Kempesca, swimming and so forth. 2 of them, Dad and his wife. And she was real nice. She wasn't that she wasn't nice, but then one day, I don't remember this, all the details, but Harris was with us, and Dad says snide things every once in a while about Mother. And he wouldn't take it. He just got mad at Dad and told him off.
Told him off real good.
Told him off. And then we came home and told Mom, and she says, no, you don't have to take that anymore, she says. So she didn't make us go over there anymore. So that was kind of nice that we didn't have to do that anymore. That's about the last I can remember. I can remember Mother used to have us, Don and I, have long curls.
Mm-hmm.
And he would always fuss about that too, long hair, he didn't like that. So one day we got our hair cut, and so we thought, well, we'll go and show Dad now that we got our hair cut. And we went over there and showed him we got our hair cut, and he hardly even talked to us. It was crazy.
Mm.
That's about the last time I ever remember seeing my dad.
Oh, really? You didn't, when you were growing up, you didn't have any contact with him?
Oh, until when I was 8 years old, he was at home.
I mean, growing up, but I mean, like, in your teenage years and when... No? He didn't come to the wedding when you got married? Any of your sister's weddings?
Mm-mm.
You just you kind of disowned the whole family.
Vice versa too.
Vice versa.
He got married, and then after he got married, then they were in Watertown, I don't know how long, but then they moved to Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. And we went to Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, didn't we? But they weren't there then. He had already died then,
I don't think so. Oh, no, we'd had to go to the grave, yeah.
Yeah, when we didn't go to the graveyard.
We didn't know where his wife was.
We didn't know.
She might have been living there yet.
I don't know. But we went through that town on one of our first trip, I guess it was.
Coeur d'Alene?
Coeur d'Alene, Idaho.
See, I'm probably going through there too this time of month.
That was before. That was before. We didn't have a camper then. It was earlier already, some percent.
Is that when we had the trailer?
Mm.
No, that was when we stopped and saw your friend,
Well, did we go? Was everybody with us?
in Santa Maria or something.
Was everybody with us? So we had a whole
Somebody was
carload of on the bomb.
No, not that. It was.
Wasn't that year? No,
Yeah, we did too. We did have all of our kids with us.
Same time.
You were with us. You were just a kid.
One of the family reunions.
Was that before he was born? That was before he was born.
I don't think the family was with us. I don't remember.
Yes, they were, because they were at, when we went to see, oh, what's your
Oh,
friend's
they-
name?
Yeah, Prices.
Bright Prices,
That
yeah.
is St.
The
Mary's.
kids were with
St.
us,
Mary's,
the
Idaho.
girls.
Do you remember, tell me something about your brothers when you were growing up. What do you remember about your family life? Did your brothers kind of take over when Dad left? They kind of help out? Or?
Oh, yes, yeah, they had to, because it was depression years. I think if Mother had known, she might not have divorced him.
Oh yeah? She had known the hardships that were ahead.
And so, you know, after, because I was 8 years old in 1930, so I was born in 1922.
That was
So
a
that was
year
just
after the
the
crash.
depression when it
Mhm.
started.
29 crash, stock market crash.
Yep. And my older brothers, see, my oldest brother was in the Navy at that time. He had gone in the Navy when he was 17, I guess. So he was still in the Navy.
His name is?
Keith. And Carol, he worked at some kind of a cement factory there in Watertown, South Dakota. And Ray worked. Shirley got married about that time. So I was about 10 years old, I think, or I was younger than that. She got married just after the divorce. Because that's when we moved about a half a block from the Assembly of God Church. Yeah.
Harley, was Harley living there? Did they live in their one place, Shirley and Harley?
Did Harley what?
Did they live with you?
After they got married, yeah.
Harley and
They had a
Shirley?
room up, it's a two-story house, yeah. And they lived with us for a while when they first got married. And Ray worked. She worked for the city. She worked for, what was it? Anyway, she was where the jail was. She could see some. They had peek holes that you could watch the people in the jails. I remember that because I used to go there. You would see that. Be sure that they were all right, not hanging themselves. And let's see. The other brothers, now see, Norris, this was before we even came to Watertown. When we were on the farm outside of Watertown, there was a teacher that taught at our school, kind of like Norris. And they didn't have any children, so when we moved to town, why, she asked if they couldn't keep Norris. And he would go through the school there. She was the teacher. And he could help at the farm. And so Mother let her do that. Let the teacher do that. And so we always thought Norris was pretty special when he had come to town, because he would always have everything he needed.
Yeah?
Clothes and everything.
Because he was the only child.
He was kind of the special one there. And when he got to going to high school, then of course he came home. But all those years he was with them. That was kind of nice for him, I thought. But I didn't see into his heart. He didn't think it was so nice. Isn't that funny? Because he had everything he needed. It was just great. He was the only one, and they doted on him. And instead of enjoying it there, he wanted to be home with
Homesick all the
everybody.
time. Well, yeah,
He was
it's his
homesick
family.
for his family, I guess. It was so funny. But
So he might have felt a little bit outcast, huh?
I suppose I guess he did. But it was the best thing in the world for him as far as that goes. He's got a wonderful education right there, having his own little tutor there. And I think that's what, those years that he was with them, was what really made him what he is today. Part of it, his stability and his discipline. And he's still, I shouldn't say, kind of a little different.
Eccentric.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, he is.
He doesn't need people. Maybe that's, he seems like he doesn't anyway. He's got Pauline now, I guess, and that's all he needs. But my other two brothers, Harris and Eldon, worked on farms. And then they would come home, you know, in the winter time, I guess they would come home in the winter time. And all summer long they'd be working on farms around there.
Who were you
That was
closest?
during the Depression.
Yeah. Who were you closest to? Which of your siblings were you closest to?
Dawn. It was until she got married and she went, they're all different places.
Mm-hmm.
I've been close to all of them. Shirley was kind of like, was my second mother. She was always kind of, and Ray is the one I always fought with when I was,
Yeah.
she wanted to be my mother, but I wouldn't let her be my mother. And yet, in her later years, I used to just enjoy going to visit her. We had our differences that we had to, certain things we just, when we saw that we weren't agreeing, we just quit talking about it. And we had plenty enough to talk about that we could agree on and exchange things. Every time I went to her house, we ended up talking about the Lord and things of that nature. It was a pleasant experience going to visit with her, as long as we didn't get on certain things that we disagreed on, which we did disagree on some things.
On certain subjects?
Ray was a little legalistic. And I guess more than I am. I think everybody is legalistic in some certain ways.
Right. You mean in theological things?
Yeah, because, well, when we were first saved, our ministers hadn't had a lot of education. You know, we were just starting, Assemblies of God was just starting, and it was like a child learning to grow up. And our ministers were very sincere and taught what they believed. I'm sure they weren't thinking that they were teaching things that were false or anything, but and so what they taught us, we just thought, and of course they could get it out of the Bible, as you say, and you can believe anything,
Interpret
get
it
it any, yeah, you can interpret it any way you want to. But as they got more education and more into the Word and were able to see the different ways of looking into it, and I think Bible is something that you can get fresh every day.
And so Ray still took some of those old beliefs with her?
Oh yeah, she just held over some of them.
That were just, yeah.
And so she just seemed like she wouldn't.
You sound like you don't want to talk about those, though.
Hmm?
You don't want to talk about those, though.
Nah.
That's fine.
Nah.
It's water under the bridge.
Doesn't help any.
So,
Well, I'll tell you
tell me-
one thing. I'll tell you one thing. And it kind of irked me. I'll tell you one thing.
Okay, just for an example.
It happened to be Eldon.
Uh-huh.
When Eldon got his divorce and everything. Of course, everybody was sad. Everybody felt bad about Eldon getting a divorce from Lucille, because we all loved Lucille. She was a terrific gal, and she thought Eldon was saved when she married him, and he was just pretending. And so her whole married life with him was not pleasant, because unsaved with the saved, it just doesn't work very good. And so when they were divorced, well, we just felt bad. And so Ray writes in our chain letter about when it was about time for our reunion, and she said, well, I'm going to have Lucille be my roommate. Of course, this was after Eldon had remarried and everything, and it just wasn't right for her to do that, because Eldon was our family, and just because he had done something wrong, we weren't going to throw him out. She said, well, I just assumed he wouldn't even come. And I said, Ray, that's not right. And I says, what kind of, you're supposed to love people, not. And I thought she didn't show love at all
Yeah.
in that respect. But you know, after she died, And I looked through her prayer. She had a regular little prayer book, not prayer book like in church, some churches, but she had pictures of different ones that she was praying for, and one of them was Eldon. So a lot of things Ray spewed off with really down deep. She wasn't. That's why I don't want to bring up a lot of stuff.
That's good. Little red light on, yeah. Okay. So Mom, tell me about when you were making plans for your wedding. Who was people that were helping you, and what was the circumstances like? You were married in glad tidings here, right?
But we
Were you all alone when you were getting?
We were both living in here.
Anaheim.
She was in Anaheim and I was living in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
And I'd go home for weekends. Down to the folks lived. The folks lived in Anaheim.
Mm-hmm.
That's where they went to church.
I met him at a water baptismal service.
Is that what that was?
I was playing the piano.
It was in Santa Ana.
In Santa Ana.
Church in Santa Ana.
Remember the name of the church?
Something about church in Santa Ana.
You know what street it's on?
I don't remember, do you?
I think that's the only time I was in it.
Well, what year was it? Do you remember?
45. No, but it might have been 46 already.
Mm-hmm.
No, I think
No,
it was
I
still
think it was
45.
40.
Still
I think it
45.
was.
Yeah, it was in 45.
It doesn't really matter.
See, I got out of the service in November, and we had part of November and all of December yet. That I saw her every Sunday, you see.
Mm-hmm. So, but when you were actually planning, you'd already met. How long were you courting before you decided to get married?
About 3 months.
Wow.
From
Is that a lightning
I was
courtship or what?
24 and he was 30,
it was
so...
a week after the Valentine's Day when we had the first actual date, or something like that, for about a week.
You remember what you did on your first actual date?
Mm-hmm. Sonia Henny's
Ice skate.
Ice Capades.
Oh yeah, Sonia Henny's Ice Capade.
It was in Los Angeles at the that big arena in the West Los Angeles.
Luella went with us, and Marlene. It was kind of funny because
Marlene was pretty young.
Marlene was just a little kid, and I remember Luella saying to her, now Marlene, this is a sin, what we're going to do is a sin. See, that's how how funny we were.
I didn't think it was a sin.
No, we didn't either. We didn't, but in the old times, anything the world did, the Christians were not supposed to do.
Oh.
We took that very
It
seriously.
sounds like it's it's pretty it almost is lining up with some of the not the Puritans, but not the Shakers. What are the people in Pennsylvania?
Oh, well, that's
The Dutch.
Amish.
Amish. It sounds like
Amish,
the kind of
yeah.
separatist.
It was a little.
Like that's the thing it came out of. Like it came from
It
that.
probably was.
Had some of that separatist. Don't want to involve yourself with.
Although no, we weren't quite as bad as that. But,
Right, but I mean,
but it was a little like we weren't supposed to do anything like that. Go roller skating. Oh, that was terrible. Even when I was in high school, we weren't supposed to go to the football games. I remember the minister preaching against that, which was silly. I mean, it's so stupid now when you look back on it, how dumb that was, and yet it didn't hurt us.
Didn't hurt
It
anything.
didn't hurt us because it was.
Well,
It's our attitude rather than. I mean,
you might have missed out on some social things, but you know.
Oh, we went to the football games.
Anyway, yeah. Okay,
Just like
so
and we
you-
went roller skating.
That's right.
Once in a while.
Yeah, to do that kind of stuff. So you had you decided to get married after 3
Yes.
months of courtship.
Yes. So.
Well, I proposed to her the first date.
My mother. Well, I don't think it was quite that soon.
More or less, you see, on the way home, I said, "Would you like to make life worth living for me?"
My goodness, how could you refuse that?
I know. Was she?
And my mother lived in San Francisco, where of course I lived for quite a while. And so I wanted to get married in the Glad Tidings Church because that's the one I had been going to for quite a while. And they had an organ, and I knew the people that were there that sang, and I wanted them to sing for the wedding. And so that's how come I came to San Francisco then and planned the wedding. Don in Norwood that he had was working for his dad at that time, the radio station, and they had deals. So all my flowers were through the station.
Oh wow.
Which was very nice.
And he recorded it
And you record? I've got it all.
on a platter, great big platter.
I've seen
You've
that.
never played it.
Never have.
How can you play a thing that's
Wow,
this
they
big?
should have had it recomposed or something
Yeah.
onto a tape by now.
Have to find somebody. To
Still
do
can,
that.
I guess.
I don't know.
But it's one of those that you can't play it very many times. That
No,
it
it's
won't.
never
It
been
isn't a
played.
production player. It'll play for a while, but it deteriorates fast because it's just soft wax. It isn't
Mhm.
pressed.
Right.
Yeah, it recorded the whole thing, and Norwood, what do you call it, was emceeing of it. He told all about it and
Narrator.
how the people were dressed and all that. So it's all there. We got it.
Just gotta get it.
Maybe for our 50th wedding anniversary, we'll have it played.
Gotta get it played.
Wouldn't be a bad
Put it onto
idea.
a tape.
We can still find it.
Well, I know it's down there. I see
If
it
we
once in a
move
while.
out of here, we'll have to make sure that it's in the trunk or whatever
Yeah.
place it is.
So my
So-
my 3 sisters were the bridesmaids.
Mhm.
Dawn was maid of honor, and I had my friend that sang in the choir with me when I was living in San Francisco. She had a daughter and a son, and I had them be the flower girl and the ring bearer. They weren't little tiny tots. They probably were. Oh, she was probably maybe 8 years old,
Mhm.
older.
Mhm.
I had a 32 Chevy 6 sedan that I'd bought because my sister needed the 40 Chevy. I had the 40 before the war. 40 Chevy, I bought it in September of, I think when it came out. It came out in September in those days. I traded the 37 in for 40 because we bought this 37 together. We were both making the payments, and then when I traded it in, I was gonna finish it off, but I had got drafted, and of course she drove it all the while while I was in the service after we left Fort Ord, and I bought this other Chevy because she needed the car. And that's what our first date was, and I took her home from a Valentine's party that night. That wasn't a date, I just took her home from a Valentine's party. I think I was CA president at that time.
Well, shortly after anyway.
So how long between the 3 months the first 3 months after you decided to get married, how long before the actual wedding day was it?
Actually, what the
June
wedding?
6th is when we got married.
See, it was about a week after the Valentine's party that we went to see Sonia Henney and there's escapades.
You were married that June?
And then we were married June 6th. That was from February.
Yeah.
From first date
February
to marriage, about 5 months.
February, March, April, May, June.
4 months.
Not even 4 months. It was 3 months and something because it was about the middle of February when we started going together. But when it's the one that's the one. Well, then of course it shouldn't take long. Why should it?
Well, we knew each other's.
We knew.
I knew his family.
Right.
Very good. I knew it. In fact, I knew Erma before I knew any of them because she was.
I probably
in
saw
Watertown.
her when I was 17. I wouldn't know for sure because
Was that when Erma
I
was
think
there?
Erma was up in Watertown there when I was about 17. And I was at the church there where she was in Watertown with the Jameses being pastor.
You wouldn't have looked at me at that time.
Visited her there, and
Why wouldn't he have looked at you at that time?
I was 10, 11 years old.
Oh, of course, naturally. I mean, you were what, 17?
I was a kid.
she was a little over 6 years younger than I am.
Yeah.
Oh. Uh-huh. So yeah, you were 16, 17. So how long after you were married before you decided you wanted to have children?
About 3 years,
A
wasn't it?
couple of years, I guess, because my first was a miscarriage.
Mm-hmm.
That we were married
Oh, yeah.
2 years at that time.
Was that difficult for you?
Sure, I wanted that little rascal. But you know, it was my fault. Because I went to the dentist, we both went to the dentist. And I didn't see any reason to tell him I was pregnant. And he, I guess... Anesthetized. They say you're supposed to tell them if you're pregnant. Because sometimes the medication, I guess, that they give you for...
And you feel that's what triggered it, huh?
It
Yeah, because it was right after that.
Might have been, you never can tell.
Yeah, I think it was.
Hmm.
But, so we were 3 years, married 3 years when we had Cheryl.
Mm-hmm.
Man,
Living in
she's
Anaheim.
special.
Yeah, I bet. Living in Anaheim, right?
No, we were living in Maywood.
Oh, Maywood, that's right.
We had moved to Maywood, and he had gone to what was that?
Frank
School?
Wigan Trade School, machinist school,
When he learned to become a machinist.
through the GI Bill.
Mm-hmm.
We were living above the double garage.
From the Steels. It was a
Above
nice
the
little
double
apartment.
garage.
It was a nice little apartment.
What was the name of the people you said, Steele?
Steele.
Mm-hmm.
It
Good
was
friends. Edith Steele.
Edith and
Good-
Carmi.
Good
They had
friends.
2 children, Billy and Linda.
They were church members.
Was their name Billy? Bill.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was Billy.
So when you had a second child, it was time to move, right?
Before
No.
that, we
Or
did.
moved before that.
We moved when Cheryl was about 18 months.
See,
We bought our own.
When
That's
did
the
she-
fruit. We
when
bought
did-
our first house.
when did she, when was she born?
Cheryl,
Yeah.
49.
Yeah, see, and then in 51 we bought a new home, brand new
Mhm.
home. Nobody had lived in it.
You still remember the address?
Yeah.
Mm-mm.
No, I don't.
Can't remember the dress.
I know the one in Shell
It was
Street,
in-
166 Shell Street.
What?
That was the second one, right?
No.
No, that's the third one.
That's
Third
the
one. This is the fourth one.
Yeah. And then that's when
Seemed like it was 59 then. Anyway,
Sharon was born there and Terry was born there. And then we moved to Maywood when Ray decided to go into, what did she decide to do?
Ray sold her house. Ray sold her house in San Francisco and moved down to Anaheim. And she bought a home right near the church. And she got married, didn't she? And then I bought the house from her, and I gave her a down payment was a Plymouth station wagon, and I paid the house off. I paid the house payments, and then and paid the Plymouth off. That was her payment.
And that was half a block from the church. That was
Yeah,
nice. And
half a block.
Cheryl went to school there. They had a school too. Her first year she went there. And then they decided not to have a school the second year, which was disappointment. When they started the kids in
You had all 4 kids then while you were in Maywood, though.
Maywood, and then we had Tammy when we moved to Maywood. So we had all 4 girls there.
That's
Yeah.
right.
And Tammy was 18 months old when we moved up here,
And the reason you moved up here?
Pacifica.
Well, I had a real good job for about 8 years, and the last year or two, the situation there was real rough. One of the owners was a drunk. The superintendent was a drunk. The superintendent, the foreman of the assembly department was practically a drunk. He was an ex-officer, and about 3 of the straw bosses. They had different lines of ladies assembling, and each line had a foreman. Well, about 3 or 4 of them were too, because
There's a lot of alcoholics in where you were working.
alcoholics.
So you decided you want to get out of that
So
situation.
the tension was so bad that my best friend, he was an electrical engineer. He quit, He went back to his old job. And for some reason I didn't. I don't know why I didn't. Well, it was all in the will of the Lord that it should happen that way. I can see it all now, you see. And I could have gone right back to my old job, I know, because the foreman, when I left, he said, "Wow, it's a job. You got a good job here. Why are you leaving?" Well, for some reason, the whole thing was all in the Lord's will, and I was wondering myself. You see, well, it was a step up. I would be the foreman of the machine shop, and be the jig and fixture builder and designer and tool and die maker, and troubleshooter throughout the whole plant, which was an excellent job because all my life,
Because he loved it.
all my life up to about 16 or 17 years old, I knew I could never do anything. Everything was done for me, and everybody made my decisions for me and everything. And when I finally got through high school and I got into where I could feel my way around, that I knew that I had some abilities too. And after I got out of the service, well, I went to this machinist school and got myself a good machinist job. And that foreman, he was excellent. He just said, "Make me a jig to do this job." Well, he didn't know whether I could or not. He said, "You go on and do it." So, well, I studied it out and I made it. And oh man, that works good. Well, I said, oh man, that's good. Well, if I could be the foreman of a shop, and be the instigator of a lot of the jigs and fixture and everything, designer and everything, well, that's a step up, But it really wasn't for quite a while. But what's bringing this on?
Was there a step?
Why am I telling you?
Why we're coming up here? Why you moved up to San Francisco?
Oh yeah, sure. Well, I got into this company. It was ground floor. Got to start from scratch, And I think I was about the 10th employee, because they had the superintendent of the plant, and they headed the inspection department, and one of the ladies in the inspection department, and the printing guy, and 2 owners, and 2 engineers. I was then within the eighth person to come on the job. And of course, I went out and bought machines that I needed in the shop and everything. Well, when that finally got so bad, well, they had a fire and moved to Azusa, and Azusa was just terrible up there because of the atmosphere. Smog was just devastating. And this, you see, all work together, the same thing. You see, it's so obnoxious to work in a place like that where the tension is so high, and you didn't know what was happening next, you see, because Monday morning, why, they'd all come in with a hangover and bawling each other out and bawling us. I never did get bawled out because I wouldn't stand for it. But the guy in the shop, see, we had a place where we manufactured a lot of parts by the punch presses and other machinery, riveting machines and everything. That's where a lot of the parts were made. And I was the troubleshooter for that. We had a foreman for that, of course, but I was a setup man. Whenever the difficulty, I'd go out there and set it up and everything, you see. And they give that guy such a bad time. He come complaining to me, And I just, what's the use,
So you said, forget it, I'm going to San Francisco.
So I just laid low. We just instead of being in there and doing something, I just marked time. And said, "You're going to get laid off." I said, "That's good." Then I got laid off. I just took my check and walked out. There was fiberglass. I think I wouldn't make any effort at all to stay. Well, then I had in the meantime, I bought myself a whole little machine shop, and I was in this business there for about 6 months or something like that. When a call came from Norwood in San Francisco, said there's there's a 10-stall automobile repair shop going broke. We can get it real cheap, he says. And he says, you run that and I'll advertise for you and we'll split the profits. Well, shucks, anything's better than what I was doing. I liked my little shop, but I couldn't.
Didn't pay.
I couldn't collect. They just use you, you know. They collect the money all the time. You know, it's working for nothing. So I went up and looked it over, and it was looked good, and so we went up there, moved up here.
Pacifica.
But in the meantime, while Norwood was negotiating for a loan and one thing and another, why the guy refinanced himself, got him refinanced, and then went back into business.
Mm.
That fell through.
So Norwood says, "Well, let's
Work for
But
me.
you got I see I had $10,000 then that I sold 2 homes and had a profit sharing that I came through with. And he said, we'll see if we can put for $10,000. He said, you can buy a real good apartment house, maybe 15, 20 apartments in it, and you can run that, you know, let it pay itself off. But it didn't seem to work out very good. We couldn't find anything, and you know, why don't you just loan me the money and start working for me? Oh well, what's the difference? That was the experience that oh man, that was excellent experience. Yeah.
What did you do at KSA?
Everything.
I did almost everything, but being a disc jockey, I substituted for a disc jockey for 3 weeks from 7 in the evening until 1 o'clock in the morning. 6 nights a week.
Somebody was on vacation.
And he was on vacation, went to Texas. But on Sunday mornings for about 6 months, I put the radio station on the air and worked from 7 in the morning till 1 on Sunday mornings. But in the meantime, many times on Sunday evening, well, even then, when I was working there, I'd go to different churches with the remote, they called it, and I'd fasten this machine onto the telephone wires and put 3 mics out, and then with the telephone, I'd call up the station and say, am I hooked up all right? Am I coming through? Yeah, I'm coming through. Okay, everything going good? Yeah, everything's lined up. Okay.
And they do live from the church, huh?
And I'd have a radio, listening to radio, and I said, okay, you're on.
Live, right there.
And we'd put them on for 15 minutes or half an hour, whatever it was, and I'd fold up and go back home and take this stuff home. And sometimes, there's few Sundays there, I put on 3 different churches. If I'm not mistaken, it was in the afternoon, and I don't know.
Sounds like it was a real fun job, a very fulfilling job. You enjoyed it. How long did you get to keep that one?
That was almost a year that I did the remote stuff. But the whole job was about 2.5 years. And of course I worked on the boat, the Nevada lady, and bought himself a 110-foot subchaser converted into a yacht. It was a wooden hulled boat.
I remember that, yeah.
With two screws.
Always beautiful weather there. You'd come on the Pacifica, the fog.
It had 2 props, opposing props. It had two Hill diesels that runs DC generators. And it was fully equipped. It was a real interesting job. And then, of course, I'd work at the station. I run the A.B. Dick machine. I run the folding machine. I was janitor a lot of times.
Everything.
And
So okay, but
They enjoyed you.
how old were you when you got drafted, or when you joined up? Did you join up or did you get drafted?
I was drafted in. Well, I was born in '15, and I got into Fort Ord on January '41.
So you were
27,
27.
20, 21, 26. That would be 26.
26, yeah. So there's a period of time that I'm missing between, when you got, I'm wondering about between like 18 and
Oh yeah, from the
26.
farm
You were farming?
I was born and raised on a farm. I was
Right.
20 years old in 1935 when I left. When Dad made sail and moved, he moved to Anaheim, California, or near Anaheim. That's where his one of Mother's sisters was living there near Anaheim.
And when did you come to California?
And then I went to the eastern part of the state, was there for 2 years. We visited in 36, and then came out in 37 permanently. And my first job, well, when in 36, I picked oranges for 6 weeks for a company in Fullerton. And then when I came back in 37, my first job was picking beans. We got there on the July the 3rd, and on July the 4th, the phone rings up there. Dad's like, yeah, he says that everybody that's available, come pick beans. So Dad and Hilmer and I, we all went over there and picked beans because so the beans are ready to pick, and if we wait till over Sunday or where it was, he said there'll be two course, you know, 24 hours. So we had about 10 or 15 of us in there picking beans. And then my next job was pulling tents for fumigators. That was a good job, but it was dangerous. You know, if you happen to be downwind of the fumigate or anything, well, then it was hit and miss because you couldn't fumigate unless it was cloudy. If they had a high fog, you could fumigate because everything was dry. But if it wasn't dew on the trees, it would burn the leaves, I guess.
So,
and then I worked in a packing house in L.A. and then started living with Laverne in a little apartment near Angeles Temple. And I worked for a packing company part-time, and then I worked for a battery shop part-time. And that's when I got drafted, is when I went full-time in the battery shop, because there was just the boss and another guy and me. And this other guy, he knew it was going to get in the war, so he went to work for an air manufacturing place. It was Donald Douglas, I guess. And that left me alone in the shop there. And I would have had my picture in the paper if I'd have put my work address at home. Because you see, we weren't home, but the lady of the house where we had our apartment, she was home, and she said, well, I don't know where he works. He lives here. So all I got was my name in the paper. Otherwise, I would have got my picture in an interview. I was drafted, and the first draft was filled with 6 volunteers in our precinct, so I didn't have to go in the first draft, which was in October, and the second draft, which was in December, I guess, when they got me too. And then I reported to Fort MacArthur in San Pedro, and from there they bussed us up to Fort Ord, and that's where I had my boot camp.
So there's a similar period that I'm missing from you, Mom.
Then,
Actually, a larger period that I'm missing from you. It's even from like when you were going up through high school, all the way until you were 24.
Well, I was.
You went through high school in Watertown, right?
Watertown, and then I went, when I was in the 10th grade, Ray was working in, I think she was a teacher at that time. She taught typing and shorthand in the business school and where the Bible college was. And she wanted me to be with her. So she says, why don't Joyce come with me and she can finish in the business school.
wasn't that in Minneapolis?
Yes.
Minneapolis, Minnesota.
Minneapolis, Minnesota. So Mom said it was okay. Sure, I wanted to go, which was so dumb, because I never did get to go to school. Well, I came back and went till I was the middle of my 11th year, but that was all. Then I didn't finish, that was ridiculous. Anyway.
I didn't go through school either, to high school.
And,
it was 2 years.
And then I was in Billings, Montana for a while after that, and that was when Eldon and Harris and Norris, all 3 of them were in the service at that time. That was during World War II. And I was there with Lucille, and she had her baby, and Eldon was in the service. Sad, sad, sad. Have a baby without your husband there. And shortly after that, then I came to California. Went back to Watertown and came back to California with Norris and Babe and her folks. And I stayed with them for a while. Worked for the telephone operator, as a telephone operator. And then Ray got married and came to San Francisco. And my mother followed her there. And then so I wanted to come to San Francisco to be with them. So I did. I came to San Francisco and found out that I would have to work for the telephone company at night. I didn't have to do that when I started in Anaheim, because they had enough people that wanted to work at night. But when I came up to San Francisco, they didn't have that many, I guess. So that when you first started out in San Francisco, they wanted you to start out at night. And I said, well, I can't do that, because living where I live, and to Visadero and Fillmore, somewhere in that area, is I just won't come home in the dark and have to go up. Well, at that time they had your jobs frozen. You couldn't just quit a job, because that was during the World War II. And so I had to go before a board and all that to let them, to see if they would release me. And fortunately they did. And then I went to work for Southern Pacific, I think it was, Southern Pacific Railroad, and learned to become a comptometer operator. You know what that is?
Comptometer?
Comptometer operator. So you work in the department where they figure out all the payrolls and all. It's all bookwork, and the comptometer was it's just like a machine, like a, what do you call it?
An adding machine?
Not adding, but everything.
Calculator?
Calculators, like the calculators nowadays, but this was just
Mechanical.
like almost like a typewriter. It was a big thing. It's the first thing, and you just figured all it added and subtracted and divided
Did
and
it all
multiplied.
mechanically?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
This is all manual.
Right.
Shortly after that, after I quit that and got married, well, then they started with the electrical ones, and then of course now it's computers and all that.
She's working in Santa Ana though, and she was living in Anaheim and working in Santa Ana when
I came.
got acquainted with it.
Yeah, I went
He was
back
working
to
for a tax
CPA.
income tax
yeah,
guy.
CPA guy. He did income tax.
That's why she kept doing my income tax for me.
Dad, what were your ambitions, your dreams, your hopes? Just I mean, like, what was like the ultimate thing that you wished you could be when you were like in your teens and early 20s, and you just had the desire or a drive to do something? Was there some sort of a wish, pie in the sky kind of a desire?
I never had any goal of any kind, seemed like. It just, I lived as it came. Because in those days, you see, during the Depression, it knocked the wind right out of your sails. You see, you just lived the way you could live.
You survived.
You just survived, right?
And of course, the only reason why I went to only two years in high school was because they had 2 years of agriculture, and well, I was going to be a farmer. That would have been what I'd have done if it hadn't been for the Depression and the stock and the market crash and everything. We had see, it wouldn't have been so bad if we could have raised crops, but the Depression wasn't only the Depression for us. We couldn't even raise crops because the grasshoppers ate our crops if they grew, and it was dust storms and no rain if you didn't have grasshoppers or something else, you see.
Right.
So for almost 10 years there, we were just living from hand to mouth, and was lucky to have a nickel for ice cream cone on Saturday. However, living on the farm, you could we did raise a little bit, and we dwindled down and dwindled down. You see, we had beef and pork and chicken and rabbits that we could eat, you see, because we raised them ourselves. And we'd always have plenty to eat, for that matter. No, the Lord took care of us. Anyway, I really didn't have any ambition of all, except in after the war, when I was during our occupation at Umnak Island. Though I was friends with a guy that worked in the machine shop in the ordnance, and for 6 months I worked right there beside him in the automotive department and machine shop. It had fascinated me all the time, machine shop, because I'd go to town on Saturday with the folks and run around town, you know, and many a time I'd stand there in the doorway of the machine shop where he had the lathe and the mill machine and whatever he had in there, you see, surface grinders, and he'd rebore the cylinders in motors, and he rebored our Fordson tractor cylinder, our engine.
Watching all those sparks fly really fascinating.
Yeah, and he rebored Hilmer's 28 Chevrolet block, and he put a new ring gear on our old 30 Chevy flywheel so the starter would work again. And it was just fascinated me, the machine shop. Well, I was mechanical right from the inside out. My brother, he was with horses quite a bit. He'd make himself stick horses out of, you know, put four legs on a piece of wood and put the head on and harness them up and drive them. But I didn't have nothing much to do with like horses much. I just couldn't hardly stand to work a horse. Just think of it, they have to pull that all day long, and then they're hot and they're sweating, you know, and that poor horse. Oh,
did you have a similar experience like that, Mom? That
when we got tractors,
being able to really afford to have ambition, not being able to really decide. I mean, did you have ambition in a certain direction while you were in those formative years?
A girl, all she wants to do is get married and have a family.
That was enough ambition.
Yes.
Right there, huh?
Right. That's about the only, you know, that's what a gal wants to do, is find the right one. But I wasn't willing to go with just anybody. I was very fussy about who I went with.
Yeah.
So that's how come the Lord saved me from him, I guess. He went with anybody.
Yeah.
He went
Okay, I
with
just have a couple more things I want to ask.
I went with him.
What define what is being saved?
oh boy.
Does it define what is being saved? What being saved is. To be saved is to know that you know that you know that you're hooked up, that you have fellowship, that he's taken care of it. I've let him take care of it. And by letting him take care of it, there's such a responsibility on my part to live it. It's like when I was home with my mother. I wouldn't do anything that would hurt her, because I love my mother. And a lot of things that I didn't do, that I wanted to do, was because I wouldn't have wanted her to find out that I'd done something. Of course, some things, of course, you do, but
Make sure she doesn't find out.
The one thing, and that's the way I feel about the Lord. I don't want to hurt him. Of course, I know yes, you can wound him, you know. But he's taking care of it, even if I blow it, which everybody blows it. You can always realize that he cares anyway. To be saved is to be committed to him, to know that everything's going to be all right. He's in control. Even if everything seems to be going wrong, he still he understands. And it's eventually it's going to turn out all right.
The question was, define salvation?
Yeah.
Well, you know, the Lord has provided for everybody that was born, or anybody that was on this as the earth, he has provided a way of escape from hell, which he knew was there was such a thing as hell. But he was so grateful, or whatever one might say, he didn't say, now you're going to go to heaven or else. He gave us everybody to choose whatever we want. It has been said, how can a wonderful, loving God send anybody to hell? No, he never did. He never does, and he never will. They go there by themselves. And to choose salvation, to my notion, is well, what is I'm going to say? Definition of salvation is choosing the way the Lord has provided for you to escape hell. However, to escape hell is not actually all of the reason for salvation. It's to be able to live the life as a Christian, and do things that you ought, not to things what you want to do. And it's living. I feel so much like the poet when he says, so live, that when your summons come to join that innumerable caravan that moves to that mysterious realm, where each shall take his chamber in the silent halls of death. See, it says, thou go not like a quarry slave scourged to his dungeon, but each, like, go not like scourged slave to a dungeon, but as one who wraps the drapery of his couch about him and lies down in pleasant dreams. That's the way you should face death, because there's no regrets, no sorrow, no fear. It's completely, fear is all erased from your life, and you know beyond a shadow of doubt that you're gonna make it.
One more question. First to Mom, to what do you owe your incredibly successful marriage to?
Him. He's loved me when I haven't been very lovable sometimes. He still loves me.
Same question, Dad. What do you owe the success of your marriage?
Jesus.
Other than that.
Well, that's good. I mean,
Whenever there's any difficulty, well, we knew that divorce was never the answer.
Yeah. 1, 2.
Divorce isn't the answer. You work it out, and that's what makes it so good. After it's worked out, it's much better than it was before.